Gradients in the bad old days of skeuomorphism used to be really popular, but when flat design came in, gradients disappeared. More recently, they've been making a comeback, but the gradients nowadays are much more subtle than they used to be. In modern design, you use lush, sometimes multicolored gradients with saturated colors. Go to colors.adobe.com and experiment with the different color rules, especially analogous and complementary. This is the color wheel, which helps you to follow the color rules. Analogous means next to each other on the color wheel, and complementary means opposite each other. So blue is opposite orange. Both of these rules make good gradients in any tint. In Apple's Human Interface Guidelines visual design document, they have listed some tint colors that look great on both light and dark backgrounds. I've included these colors in the asset catalog, so you can experiment using these colors. To create a gradient background, you use a special subclass of CA layer called CA Gradient Layer. And you simply supply the CA Gradient Layer with a list of colors, in this case orange and blue. To change the angle of the gradient, you specify start and end coordinates. These are between 0 and 1, where 0, 0 is the top left and 1, 1 is the bottom right. This means that however much your layer stretches, the gradient will cover the whole layer. For example, here are start points and end points with orange and blue as the start and end colors. The gradient is full orange at the start point and full blue at the end point. To prevent unsavory people hacking into our app and making inappropriate venue suggestions, we're going to design a login view. We'll do this with a background gradient on a CA gradient layer.
Build and run to see what we have in the starter app. It's just a very simple, unstyled login view, and this is the same as in the preview storyboard. So in Xcode, option-click Login View, and we can see them side by side. The class is already IB designable, and I've already done the setup methods: prepare for interface builder, awake from nib, setup and layout subviews. The controls and their constraints are in a separate setup controls method, and we don't really need to look at that. We'll start by setting up a new gradient layer. And in setup, I'll add it to the layer hierarchy. Order matters here. Just like adding views to the view hierarchy, if I add the gradient layer after adding the controls, it will obscure them. Just for the moment, I'll comment out the controls so that we'll be able to see the gradient in its full glory. In Layout Subviews, we need to set the bounds of the layer, as that doesn't happen automatically. In Layout Subviews, I'll set up the start and end colors. We'll go from dark to light. And put the gradients layer colors into an array. And the layer's in the wrong place. Here's where 0, 0 is of the view. So I can either move the position of the layer to the center of the view, or I can leave the layer's position at 0 and set the anchor point to be 0. The position's still 0, but the position is relative to the anchor point, which is now also 0. This gradient looks pretty good, and let's play around with it a bit more. All we've done so far is to set up an array of 2 colors. Let's add another color to the array. And you can have as many colors in the array as you want. All these colors are evenly spaced, but we can change the starting location for each color. The locations is a value between 0 and 1. And the gradient's gone back to 2 colours because I only set 2 locations. So the orange is off the edge of the layer. Let's make a thin strip of dark blue at the top. The dark blue goes from 0 to 0.1 of the total distance, and the other 2 evenly fill out the rest. But I can have more orange if I want by changing the location. Here I've specified that the orange becomes fully orange at halfway. To make the gradient a different direction, I can set start and end points. Let's go from left to right. Here's the start point, and here's the end point, and the gradient follows that angle. Let's take out that ugly orange and the locations. To go diagonally, I can put the start point at the top left and the end at the bottom right. And the gradient's now diagonal. I've set up some colours in the asset catalogue, and we can use those for our gradient. Open up the media library, that's this one down here. I've set up RW Purple Dark and RW Purple Light for the gradients. So I'll remove the UI Color blue colour and drag in RW Purple Dark and add CG colour to it. And the same for the light colour. And that's our final gradient. CA layer gradients are axial gradients, and that means that they're always in a straight line on one axis. If you want to do radial gradients, that's gradients in a circle, you can use Core Graphics, and we'll have a look at that in the next section. Let's pretty up the rest of the controls. Uncomment set controls. And let's make the background colour of the button yellow in setup controls. Again using a colour from our asset catalogue. Remember, it's only in Core Animation and Core Graphics where we have to use the CG colour property. The background colour property is in UIKit. And we'll change the title colour to white. And while we're here, let's do some rounding of corners in Layout Subviews. We could round the corners of the gradient layer as well, but to me it doesn't look as good as square. In Setup, I'll add a slight shadow. And that's our login view complete. Let's build and run and see how it looks in the app. And that looks ready to use.